The boss of HS2 Limited, Simon Kirby, has apologised for failings in the handling of complaints from residents affected by the high-speed rail line, which will run through Buckinghamshire. And it comes after a recent report from a parliamentary watchdog found that HS2 Limited actions had fallen so far below reasonable standards that they constituted maladministration. Blimey. Now, giving evidence to a committee of MPs, the Chief Executive Officer of HS2 Limited, Simon Kirby, said the firm is learning from its mistakes.
I think I'd also like to just apologise to the group as well, actually, to the committee as well, for the report before I answer the question anymore. The report does reflect the organisation in 2012 and 2014, and as recognised in the report as well, a number of steps have been taken since then.
That's Simon Kirby, the Chief Executive Officer of HS2 Limited. Well, let's talk to Joe Rukin, Campaign Manager for Stop HS2. Joe, very good afternoon to you. He's apologised. Should we all move on?
No. As the chair of the committee, Bernard Jenkins, said afterwards, well, you're all great at making these pronouncements, but where's the action? And, Cheryl Gillen wheeled off a list of complaints from other MPs along the route. All of them saying how bad HS2 Limited not have been historically, as Kirby was trying to make out, but as they are now, in terms of, forget responding to residents, they're not even responding to the MPs. And residents are obviously going to the MPs because it's a government project. Who do you go to? You go to your MP. And the MPs are complaining. Almost every single one of them along the route had submitted evidence saying HS2 Limited are simply not good enough. It's terrible. It really is. And
well, it doesn't make for great reading, does it, when this parliamentary watchdog says that their actions had fallen so far below reasonable standards, and I'm quoting here, that they constituted maladministration. I mean, that's quite powerful stuff. Well, yeah, that's parliamentary language for absolutely, completely rubbish. There was actually one point in that report where, they didn't use the word, but they found HS2 Limited guilty of blackmail. That the man who had actually made all the complaints, they said, OK, we'll pay you the compensation which you're actually entitled to if you drop your complaints. What? Sorry, this is a problem with HS2. What are the arguments, Joe, that's come up? I mean, Simon Kirby is suggesting that they are, given the scale of the project, that they are learning. There's a lot to learn, and they are learning along the way. And I know that one of the MPs suggested, well, for the money we pay you, which I think is £750,000 a year, they don't want someone who's learning along the way.
Well, that's it. They said, are you really worth 3 times what the Prime Minister's on? But we're a learning organisation. Lessons will be learned. We've heard it all before. It's been 6 years, Roberto, and they simply don't care. If they don't care about what the MPs are asking, God help the rest of us, is all I can say. It's the problem with HS2 Limited, and it's something that we found very odd, and a lot of us have, dealt with various arms of the civil service in, past parts of our lives and professions. And we've never come across such institutionalised incompetence, really. And it's simply, a cultural thing within the organisation that they just don't seem to care. The Residents' Commissioner...
Well, they would dispute... Look, they would dispute that, Joe. Is it because the scale of the project in front of them and the constraints that they are still having to work with, that perhaps it is just too big?
Well, it is too big, but the reality is that they've been told, we don't care what anyone says, and that's clear because of all the independent reports you've seen over the last 6 years that have slated HS2 for various reasons. We don't care what anyone says, just get on with it. And that's what they've been doing, and they've been treating the people along the route as an inconvenience. Because obviously saying, well, they don't want HS2, so why the hell should we be talking to them? That's their attitude. This is the thing. It's a cultural attitude within the organisation, and people simply don't trust them anymore.
But does it reassure you, though, Joe, does it reassure you that this committee of MPs is keeping on top of the story?
No, because, we've had the Public Accounts Committee, the Treasury Select Committee, the Environmental Audit Committee, the Lords Economic Affairs Committee. every independent organisation that's ever looked at HS2 has come down and slammed HS2 Limited. Even when you've had parliamentary debates, the MPs from the Lords who are for HS2 have criticised HS2 Limited. You know, if you've got friends like them, you don't need enemies. It's great that it's great that this committee have looked at this, but sadly we just don't see them changing, because it's been 6 years of this totally rubbish relationship. And how can we believe and trust in them in the future that, you know, all their promises about construction, etc., are going to come forward?
Joe, thank you. Joe Rukin, campaign manager for Stop HS2. We'll have more on this story before 6. HS2. Well, let's bring Ron Peterson into the conversation. Ron chairs the Wendover Action Group for HS2. Ron, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Ron, we've had this apology today. What do you make of it?
It's empty. We lived through this for the past 6 years. We participated in the consultation process all along, and it was a sham.
Ron, we heard from Joe Rukin from Stop HS2, one of the other campaign groups, and he says that he feels they've been treated as an inconvenience. Is that how you feel?
I think they did what they felt they had to do. They had to listen. They had to show up to listen, but they didn't want to hear. So I think we definitely were tolerated rather than listened to carefully.
And are you confident, Ron, that this committee is going to make a difference in the long run? I mean, they are asking questions.
Well, the committee, of course, is now finished. It's done. It finished yesterday. It no longer exists. The report has been published. I think it's fair to say that they accomplished something, largely, I believe, because of the efforts of some of the MPs along the line, like Cheryl Gillen, who did an outstanding job of helping to extend the tunnel at least a bit further into the AONB. But they didn't listen hard enough, and we are left with the residual of that. We now have to fight the fight in the House of Lords.
Ron, do you mind me asking, how far away do you live from the proposed route?
Oh, it's about 700-800 meters. I can see it from my home. I can see the route from where I live.
Because it has been it's been years, as you say, 6 years, a long, drawn-out campaign. And I know a lot of people feel so frustrated about the whole process.
And these are people, hundreds of people, who have given so much of their time, effort, and in many cases money, and not always because it affected them so much directly, but because of what it means to this AONB. I mean, this is the lungs of London. We are the only AONB directly affected by HS2. And they couldn't take the time even to bid the price of an alternative tunnel going all the way through the AONB, which we requested. But because it would be an inconvenience to HS2 to have to bid that second below-ground alternative, they said they just simply couldn't do it.
And are there any options left on the table, Ron? Is there anything else that can be done to appease, but to help residents like you along the route?
Well, the next step is the House of Lords. Now, that is barring further work in the European courts, but that could take 7 or 8 years. So the next real step is the petitioning process to the House of Lords, where hopefully we will have better experts sitting on the committee with less of a look to the administration or less of a look to the government in terms of their independence. So that's our next step. And
can I ask you, what does this all mean for your quality of life? I mean, we all go to work, we go home, we want to relax, live peacefully. No one wants to have to campaign and launch, these sort of campaigns and get involved. No one needs this, but yet a lot of people along HS2 have had to work so hard.
It's extraordinary how many hours many people have put in. It's quite amazing. I must say this, oddly enough, it has brought elements of the community together to an extent nothing else have, because we've got a common enemy. But at this point, we can do nothing more than to marshal our forces again in an attempt to get decisions changed and further mitigation through the efforts of the House of Lords. That's our next step.